post 3, a simple DC code, which is the requirement is on slide 10. I will give you more details later. So last time we stopped at the Dublin code, right? So this is the Dublin code metadata element code set, which includes 15 elements, 15 properties as showed here. All of them, as I already mentioned last time, are optional and can be repeated. You can see if you want to see like more descriptions of this code set, you can go to those two documents. So in general, you can split this code set into 3 categories. The first category are used for describing the content, like resource title, descriptions, type, subject, source, relation, and coverage. The second category are related to the intellectual properties, such as the creators of this resource and publisher, rights, contributors. And the last category applied in, how to say, some specific instance. So for example, many people publish their presentation in both PowerPoint PPT file and also PDF file, or their presentation could have different language versions. The content properties, the first category of a presentation, are the same, and the intellectual properties might mostly be the same, like the creators' rights of the presentation. But the third category, the insertions, might be different. Different formats like PPT and PDF, different URLs, different languages, and different available dates. So if you try to think in these 3 groups of elements, it is easy to understand these 15 core elements, these 15 core properties. This figure on slide 2 shows the DCML metadata terms. DCML stands for Dublin Code Metadata Initiatives. So this is a kind of like extended set compared to the code set. It has not only that 15 terms, the code set, but also other qualified terms. So these are the element refinement. These are the encoding scheme, and these are the DC types. So all of them together, you can call them qualified DC. So this is a extended set of the simple DC. But for your discussion post 3, you only need to use the simple DC, not this whole set of qualified DC. So using the Dublin code should follow 2 principles. The first one is called the dump down principle, which was proposed in 1998. This one was relevant to the use of qualifier. I think I have attached files here. So qualifiers was seen as a way to add context to a metadata value, clarifications of meaning, or reference to specific controlled vocabulary. According to the dump down principle, it should be safe for application or user to ignore a qualifier, use the value as if it were unqualified, and expected value, although semantically less specific, remain correct and useful. For example, here, you can see here this one. This one called alternative. Actually, this means alternative name. So the value you give to alternative should be valid and can be useful as a title in the absence of knowing that the title is alternative. So only qualified DC will have qualifiers. So if you are using simple DC, you don't need to worry about qualifiers. And the second principle here called 1-to-1, this one is I think much easier to understand. Basically, it means a single metadata record should be used to describe one and only one single object, and that object should also have one and only one metadata associated with it. So, for example, JPEG image of the Mona Lisa has much in common with the original picture, right? But it is not the same as that picture. As such, the digital image should be described it as itself, most likely with the creators of the digital image included as the creators or contributors rather than just the printers of the original Mona Lisa. So slides 5 to 6, yeah, those two introduce some terminologies related to qualifiers. So actually, there are two types of qualifier. First one is called element refinement. Second one is called encoding scheme. So element refinement, according to its name, so it's how to say, if you consider those 15 elements as properties, then element refinement are the same as sub-properties. So an element refinement is a specific case of an element that shows the meaning of its parent but has narrower semantics. Basically, in simple DC, you only use those 15 elements, but in qualified DC, you have like more choice. So you don't only specific date, you give like more specific descriptions of date. If this is a date accepted, date copyrighted, or date submitted. If you are using element refinements in qualified DC for some data value, you need to follow certain requirement. So like the format. But if you only use simple DC, then basically you can use like any value string you want. So here a value string is a human readable string that represents the value of the property of the element. Another kind of qualifier is called encoding scheme. So encoding scheme identifies schemes that could help in the interpretations of the element value. So these scheme includes either controlled vocabularies, then those are vocabulary encoding scheme, or formal notations. Those are syntax encoding schemes. So for example, the value encoding scheme here is used to indicate a terminology set from which a value is taken, and the syntax encoding scheme is used to indicate the structure of a value stream. I have include some examples here in the notes part. So value encoding scheme refers to terms from a certain controlled vocabulary, such as LCS, Library of Congress, subject heading, and the syntax encoding scheme refers to a string formatted in a certain way. For example, if you use date in qualified DC, you need to format your data value as this. You cannot just use like May 2nd, 2001. You need to format it in this way. Some elements here I have marked them with star. So in simple DC should be controlled by using a control vocabulary if they are used in qualified DC. So basically, if you are using simple DC, you can put whatever you like there in the data value field. But if you are using those 15 elements with a qualified DC, then the data value for coverage, for type, for subject, date format, language should meet certain format requirements. So I have some examples here, like here. So this is for date, right? Okay, so here you can check either the comment or reference. It says dates in qualified DC should refer to this document. Basically, you can only use dates in this format if you are using a qualified DC, although the element you are using is in that code 15 element set, but the value you enter should follow the requirement here. And of course, for those kind of sub-element that are only used in qualified DC, like data accepted, data copyrighted, data submitted, for those, of course, the data value you used must follow what this document says. So here are some examples from values associated with date element. Suppose if you are using a simple DC, then all these values are valid, because in simple DC you can use any value stream. That's right. You can use anything, any value in any format as you like. But if you are using a qualified DC, then actually only the first 4 values are valid, because only those 4 meets the requirement of the data and time formats the DCMI suggests. And of course, if you use those element refinements, like data accepts those kind of sub-element. Uh, sorry. So of course, only the first four value are valid because as long as you are using those element refinement, you are using qualified DC, not the simple DC. Also, if you take a look, let me see. So, if you take a look at language, this is also an element which has certain encoding scheme. If you use this in qualified DC, okay. So, language recommended best practice is to use the control vocabulary such as RFC 4646. So if you are using a qualified DC and if you use the language element, the value you entered should follow the requirements here. I am not going to. Yeah, this is some examples. And content type is also an element that should follow certain encoding scheme. If you are using a qualified DC, actually, these are the valid content type for type if you are using a qualified DC. So you can only choose one or some of them from this list. You cannot just mix the value by yourself. But if you are using a simple DC, that's fine. Basically, as I said, you can use anything you like. Okay, I have mentioned simple DC and qualified DC several times. So finally, here, these are the major difference between simple and qualified DC. So they also have other difference, but these are the major ones. So simple DC supports single descriptions using that 15 code, 15 base elements and value streams. So here value stream, there's no any requirement for value stream as long as the value you enter is human understandable. But qualified DC supports the richer features of the DC abstract model and allows the use of all DCML terms and even some non-DCML terms. So here DCML terms include another 3 elements. I think they are ordinals, provenance, and right holders, as well as all element refinements and encoding scheme, just like what has been included here. So this is a data model for Dublin Code, so-called Dublin Code abstract model. So again, I strongly suggest you to take LAS 566 metadata. So I'm sure Dr. McCall will give you a very detailed explanation of this DC abstract model. So I'm not going to talk too much about this model here. So the logic is a resource here should be described by one or several statements. So here, resource is anything you can identify, physical things like book, people, object, digital things like image, website, or concepts like color, place, subjects. And in the Dubin code context, the DCML type, the DCML resource type are those types. You must select one from this list, at least one from this list, and you should use one or more than one statement to describe a single resource. Here, this statement is used to describe resource, and each statement should be made up of a property, at least a property and a value. So here, a property should have a property URL, and value should also have a value URL that identifies the value and or one or more representations of that value, which means the value string. So yeah, this is a very basic, how to say, description of this DC model. Okay, so from here, it's about your discussion board post 3, which is 10 points. So this is due by I should say, sorry, November 17th, not 7, sorry, November 17th, which is the week after the due date of assignment 2. You should use this template to create a simple DC code for one resource, anything, any resource, book, journal article, map, image, website, whatever you like. And I don't have requirement about the output options, but you'd better still display it as XML. And you don't need to utilize every line here, because for some elements you may not have associated information, associated value. And just copy and paste your result, your output to, let me see, the discussion board. Here, okay, discussion board simple DC record by creating a new thread, or if you want to, you can reply to my thread. Either is fine. And if you want to, that's not a requirement. If you want to, you can go to this generator. This is a generator for advanced qualified DC code, and you can play with the code a little bit to see what's the difference between simple DC and qualified DC for the same record, for the same resource. But for the discussion post 3, you only need to copy and paste your simple DC code. So this is due by next weekend, November 17th. And you don't need to mention what type of resource it is. I can see it from the identifier. So, or if you want to, you can use the DCMI type. That will be clear. But much clearer, but you don't need to like mention it in the post title. Okay, so for the data library evaluation, so I do need to move to the database part quickly. So for the data library evaluation, I will only give you like a template to do that. So basically, data library evaluation is still largely usability evaluation, and should start from analyzing user needs. So this is a list of information you need to gather for analyzing user needs, such as the scope, definition of user group of your data library, and user characteristics such as demographic information, their knowledge and experience, especially their computer IT experience or knowledge, and level of experience with the task, with the feature offered by your digital library, and of course some of their psychologic characteristics to evaluate the how to say the library evaluations, still largely user and interactive interface evaluation. So here are some criteria reference materials you can use for evaluating the data library design, user interaction, and interface design. So we are back to the Nielsen's 10 usability heuristics, which you are using for your assignment too, right? So for each Nielsen's usability heuristics, I attach the rationale and question examples you should use for evaluating your digital library. Like for example, the first one is the visibility of system status, right? So this one is used to make sure that user understand what information exists in the collection and how to find the information. Some example questions you can use to evaluate this heuristic include, like, when searching, is it clear where you are in the digital library? How clearly does the website describe the contents of the collection? Does the formatting and organization of the website help you understand where you're in the collection? So I'm not going to read those 10 slides, but you can take a look. If you want to take the LS 562 digital library, that course, you can use this sample, this template to do your data library evaluation later. Okay, so that's all for the DC records and data library evaluation. So I think the most important part here is the is slide 10, your discussion board post 3. If you have any questions about your discussion board post 3, please just email me. Okay, thank you.